Hi there, I'm Sarah Spaceman and I was invited here to create this gorgeous unicorn themed design from the 3rd anniversary event, Reminiscence of Starstream. If you don't know me, I'm a cosplayer, and on my channel I document my process of making my costumes. And while I'm very honored to be here for Shining Nikki, I'm also kinda scared. All the designs in Shining Nikki are so intricate, and I only had 2 months to do this highly detailed, impossibly sparkly gown called Ad Lumen. But if you're watching this, I guess I managed to do it. So here's how I did it. So this dress is strapless, covered in sequins, has a gradient to it, and is semi-sheer in some parts. I've got a sequined fabric coming, but it's gonna need some structure. So the top layer of the dress is going to be 3 fabrics flat-lined together, and the bottom layer of the dress is going to be a separate structural layer of a structural fabric with boning and a built-in petticoat layer at the bottom of it. So I got a full pattern of the duck cloth cut out, and then I also cut out the same pattern, but not the skirt part, just the bodice part. That's gonna be the structural layer. I cut out a full pattern of voile, not voile, and I can't cut out the sequins yet because they're not here, but I did go ahead and make the little petticoat layer. And then to do the gradient, I took the duck cloth pieces and I dip dyed them. So now I've got all this stuff. This is gonna be the underlayer. This will eventually become the outside layer, but I'm gonna ignore all this stuff for now. So I've got the structural layer all laid out, and I'm gonna get this sewn together. Now that I've got these sewn together, we've got to add some boning channels. So I've got some double fold bias tape, and I'm gonna cut myself a channel for every spot that I have a seam. If I had made my seam allowances a little bigger, I would be able to just use them, but I only gave myself 1/2 inch. And some of my seam allowances aren't super even, so I'm gonna be safe and add these. Now I've got a bunch of little channels for all my bones to go in. But I'm gonna go ahead and get all of my bones cut, and I'm not actually gonna put them in yet, because the next thing I wanna do is serge the very bottom of this, and then sew on that petticoat layer. But I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get all my bones stuck in, and that will be my structural layer. No closure yet, but to show you how good the structure is. Look at that. Staying on with a single pin in the back. That ain't moving. Anyway, this layer is done for now. Outside layer. These 2 piles of fabric need to become 1 pile of fabric. And the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna match each voile piece to each duck cloth piece, and I'm going to serge around the edges of every single piece. So the other thing is I don't have the sequin fabric yet, but I'm going ahead and doing this anyway because I am not going to run sequins through my serger. That would be stupid. The other thing is once I get all of these pieces serged together, I'm gonna do something a little fun to add some of that extra sparkle, that extra incredibly detailed dress-up game glitter detail. I'm gonna use some glitter spray on all of these pieces once they're flatlined, just for some extra Shining Nikki sparkle. Because just like the beautifully detailed 3D dress-up models in the dress-up game Shining Nikki, we want this dress to be as beautiful and sparkly as the models in the game. So I got my sequined fabric, I got everything cut out. I made sure I got all of the beads cut out of the seam allowance because I can't sew through beads. And that took forever, but with all of that done, I got all of the sequin pieces flat-lined to the structural pieces, and now I can sew them together. So I'm gonna get my side fronts sewn onto my fronts, my sides sewn onto my side fronts, the side backs sewn onto the sides, and then the back sewn onto the side backs, and I'm gonna leave the back open. Ooh! That's not good. Now, I have this. Oh my god, it's so sparkly. Okay, before I get the structural layer in, I actually need to take care of the little flounces. Here they are. They are just 2 pieces of the voile, but all I'm gonna do is baste them to the top of this layer so that it ends up sandwiched in between this one and the structural layer. Now, I can take my structural layer and sew it right sides together with the outside layer, and that's gonna give me a clean edge all the way around the top. So now, I just gotta do the back closure, and I'm gonna do a back lace enclosure like a corset. So I'm gonna get some extra bones in there, I'm gonna get some grommets in there, and then we'll move on to doing the hem. So I decided to do the hem by hand because it meant that I would not have to go through and cut out all of the beads from the hem. So all I did was double fold it and then go around with a whip stitch. But with that, the dress is done besides the filigree in the front, so I'm gonna move on to all of the accessories. And for the tights, y'all already know I'm a play sock god. But there's a twist this time, because the whole thing is power mesh. So I've got white power mesh for the main body of the sock and my skinned toned power mesh for the top part of the sock. And I will now sing the Hokey Pokey Sock God song. You put your crotch seam in and you stop before the leg. You put your butt seam in and you also stop before you get to the leg. You make it go spread eagle, and yes, now you sew up the legs and you turn it inside out and add a waistband. That's it. That's the tights. Let's move on to the pauldrons. So first of all, the pauldrons have all of these strung beads hanging off of them. So I had to make a bunch of those. I made some that are like fully strung beads, but then for most of them, I actually just hand-tied beads into fishing line. These ended up being kind of annoying because they get tangled, but I made a bunch of them. So now let's talk about the actual pauldrons. I basically made a really lazy junk pattern in Illustrator. I cut that out of EVA foam, cut a couple choice pieces of the filigree for dimension, dremeled all that out very lazily, primed it less than I should have, painted them silver, added more weathering than necessary to cover my sins. For how junky the pattern was, I'm actually pretty impressed that I was able to get that shape. Anyway, moving on to the filigree on the dress, I got a bunch of these filigree molds for like cake decorating, and I cast a whole bunch of tiny resin pieces out of these. I painted them silver, and then I also did sort of an outline of how this shape should look in Illustrator, and then I just hand sewed them all onto the dress. So the horn, I actually got a candle mold off of Etsy, and it's plastic, so I had to make sure I used some mold release. And for the attachment, I filled up the mold like 3/4 of the way, and then made this very strange looking little contraption. What's in there is a coupling nut that has been plugged up with hot glue and foam clay, and then the coupling nut will correspond to a bolt that will be able to be bolted into the wig so that I don't have to wear a headband or anything. With that, my exquisitely designed Shining Nikki Ad Lumen cosplay was done. Thank you so much for watching. It was such a challenge to do this against the clock, but man, do I feel like the prettiest, sparkliest unicorn. And I'm so happy that I got to do this for Shining Nikki. I hope you think this cosplay is as pretty as I do, and a huge happy 3rd anniversary to Shining Nikki. And if you have a favorite Shining Nikki design that you want to cosplay, let us know in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Bye!